A Brief History of Language Teaching by Oscar and Rodgers. This chapter is briefly reviewing the history of language teaching methods, provides a background for discussion of contemporary methods, and suggests the issues we will refer to in analyzing these methods. Changing language teaching methods throughout history have reflected recognition of change in the kind of proficiency learners needs, such as move toward oral proficiency rather than reading comprehension, as the goal of language study. Nowadays, English is the world's mostly widely studied foreign language. 500 years ago it was Latin. It was dominant language of education, commerce, religion, and government in the Western world. Sector serves under coordinated for Ben and Cliff. Salient winters active and they strike quarter. How did you know? Every time that the Nazis say still can live is when they attack by airstrike. His approach to foreign language teaching became known as the Raman translation method. Raman translation was in fact first known in the United States as the Christian method. The principal characteristics of the Raman translation method were these: reading and writing are the main focus. Literal or not systematic attention is paid to speaking or listening. Vocabulary selection is based solely on the reading text used, and words are found through the link of word lists, dictionary study, and memorization. Much of the lesson is devoted to translating sentences into part of the target language, and it is the focus of the sentence that is the distinctive feature of the method. Grammar is taught deductively, that is by presentation and study of grammar approach, which are then practiced through translation exercised. Towards the middle of the 19th century, several factors contributed to the questioning and rejection of the grammar translation method. Increased opportunities for communication among Europeans created demand for oral proficiency in foreign languages. Usually this created a market for conversation books and phrase books intended to private school, but language teaching specialists also turned their attention to the way modern languages were being taught in secondary schools. The Frenchman Jean Barcel referred to child language learning as a model for language teaching, emphasized the importance of the meaning learning, proposed the reading thought before other skills, and tried to locate language teaching with a broader educational framework. The English pedagoguist was one of the record observations that children use contractional situational cues to interpret utterances, and they use memorized phrases and routines in speaking. He proposed the first social syllabus, advocating that learners be taught the most basic structural patterns occurring in the language. In this way, he was anticipating the issue that was taken up the 1920s and 1930s. Go with the Logan approach to teaching a foreign language based on his observations of children's use of a language. He believed that the language learning was facilitated through using language to complete events of consistence of a sequence of related actions. His method used situations and themes as ways of organizing and presenting our language. The famous Going series, which includes sequences and sentences related to such activities as shopping, wood, and opening the door. Going established the teacher according to his method, and it was popular for a time. Going emphasizes on the need to present new teaching ideas in a context that makes their meaning clear, and the use of gestures and actions to convey the meanings of utterances are practices that later became part of social approaches and methods as situational language teaching and total physical response. Language teaching specialists such as Marcel, Rodgers, and Gowen have done much to promote alternative approaches to language teaching, but the ideas failed to receive widespread support or attention. From the 1880s, however, practical manual linguists such as Harris Woods in England, Wilhelm Goethe in Germany, Tolpa's influence began to provide intellectual leadership needed to give the reformist ideas greater celebrity and acceptance. The discipline of linguistics was revitalized phonetics, the scientific analysis and administration of the sound system of languages, was established giving new insights into speech processes. Linguists emphasized that teach rather than the written word was the primary form of the language. The International Phonetic Association was founded in 1886, and its International Phonetic Alphabet was designed to enable the sounds to any language to be accurately transcribed. One of the earliest goals of the association was to improve the teaching of modern languages. It advocated the study of the spoken language, phonetic science in order to establish good pronunciation habits, the use of conversation text and dialogues to introduce conversational phrases and idioms, and inductive approach to the teaching proper. Teaching new meanings through establishing associations within the target language rather than by establishing associations with the native language. Linguists too became interested in the controversies that emerged about the best way to teach foreign languages. And ideas were firstly discussed and defined in books, articles, and pamphlets. Harris would argue that the soundbook methodological principles should be based on the scientific analysis of language and the study of psychology. In his book, The Practical Study of Languages, he set forth principles for the development of teaching methods. These include careful selection of what is to be taught, imposing limits on what is to be taught, arranging what is to be taught in terms for skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and reading materials from simple to complex. Sevier and other believers in the bilingual method argue that foreign language could be taught without translation or use the learner's native language if meaning was conveyed directly through demonstration and action. This German scholar F. Frank wrote until the physiological principles of the association between forms and meanings in the target language, and provide a theoretical justification for a monolingual approach to teaching. According to Frank, a language could best be taught using it actively in the classroom, rather than using analytical procedures that focus on explanation on grammar rules in classroom teaching. Teachers must encourage direct and spontaneous use of the foreign language in the classroom. Learners will then be able to induce rules of grammar. The teacher will place the textbooks in the early stages of learning. Speaking began with a systematic attention to pronunciation. Novel words can be used to teach new vocabulary using mind, demonstration, and pictures. The natural language learning principles provide the foundation for what can be known as a direct method, which refers to the most widely known of the natural methods. Enthusiastic supporters of the direct method introduced it in France, Germany. It became widely known in the United States, 3 years by Silver and Accident Berlitz of commercial language school in practice. In practice, it stood for the principles and procedures. Classroom instruction was conducted exclusively in the target language. Only everyday vocabulary sentences were taught. Oral communication skills were built up in carefully graded progression, organized around question and answer exchanges between teachers and students in small, intensive classes. Grammar was taught inductively. New teaching points were introduced orally. Concrete vocabulary was taught through demonstration of objects and pictures. Abstract vocabulary was taught by association of ideas. Both speech and listening comprehension were taught. Correct pronunciation and grammar were emphasized. The history of language teaching throughout much of the 20th century saw the rise and fall of a variety of language teaching approaches and methods, the main examples of which are described in this video. Most of them are the following as options. An approach or method refers to a remarkably consistent set of teaching procedures that define best practice in language teaching. Particular approaches and methods, if followed precisely, will lead to more effective levels of language learning than alternative ways of teaching. The quality of language teaching will improve if teachers use the best available approaches and methods. The different teaching approaches and methods have emerged in the last 60 or so years, while often having different characteristics in terms of goals, assumptions about how a second language is learned, and preferred teaching techniques having common the belief in language learning to be improved. It will become about through changes and improvements in teaching methodology. Active period in the history of approaches and methods was from the 1950s to the 1980s. The 1950s and the 1960s saw the emergence of the lingual method around the situational method, which were both suppressed by the communicative approach. During the same period, other methods attract smaller but equally enthusiastic followers, including the Soviet way, the natural approach, and the total physical response. In the 1990s, content-based instruction and text-based language teaching emerged as new approaches to language teaching, and did moments such as competency-based instruction that focuses on the outcomes of learning rather than methods of teaching. Other approaches such as cooperative learning, whole language approach, and multiple intelligence, originally developed in general education, have been extended to second language settings. Alternative ways of understanding the nature of language teaching have emerged that are sometimes viewed as characterizing the post-Middle era.